Hello. This is an interview show where two random mathematicians of antiquity find some new and interesting facts about each other.
Are we ready to get started?
Indeed we are, Hypatia of Alexandria. I want to begin by asking you about your relatives.
I'm glad you asked. My father was Tryon of Alexandria. This may sound familiar because he too was an educated and great teacher of mathematics. He taught at the Museum of Alexandria, located in Egypt. Inside of the museum was not just one school, rather it included the Library of Alexandria as well as other schools.
Fascinating. What was your relationship with your father like?
My father and I bonded over our studies. As he was teaching me mathematics, we both developed a passion in the search for answers to the unknown, which brought us closer together.
Well, a strong father-daughter bond. Simply brilliant. What else drew you into your love for mathematics besides your father?
It first began with my father, but as I continued to grow older, my interest and curiosity for mathematics grew with me, and that's all that was left to discover.
A little off topic, Hypatia, but I've noticed you are not wearing women's clothing. What is the reasoning behind this?
I'm surprised you even took notice to this. I'm not wearing women's clothing because I like to dress as a teacher and a scholar. Wearing traditional women's clothing is not as professional as wearing this.
It makes sense to dress professionally in the teaching realm. What made you want to become a teacher?
I learned a lot from my father, and not just through books and knowledge. He had a brilliant mind and wanted to share it with Alexandria. I too wanted to follow in his footsteps. It
seems like you and your father are very loyal to your hometown of the city of Alexandria. Did you ever expand your teaching career to teach others from distant places?
Well, I myself never left the city. My students would tell others of my teaching, so much so that word traveled, and soon people from other cities and towns would come to Alexandria just to hear me lecture.
Did you have a particular school as to where you taught others your knowledge?
I taught at the Neoplatonist School of Philosophy.
Impressive. Did you continue your career in the teaching field at Neoplatonist?
This is more complex than a yes or no answer.
How so?
While I first started teaching at Neoplatonist, I eventually became the director of the school by 400.
We now know of your role in advancements in mathematics. Is there any other fields of study where you were interested in?
Actually, there were. I loved math, but I also enjoyed learning about astronomy and astrology.
A woman of multiple studies. What did you accomplish in these other fields?
I wrote in all fields plus philosophy. These writings included the motions of the planets, about number theory, and about the Frank sections.
Could you tell us what it was like to live during the time when Alexandria started to become more Christian?
I'm a pagan, and having my city become Christianized was harder than it appears. This one non-threatening town soon became a battle zone of religions. Not a day would go by without a riot breaking out.
Sounds intense. What would you say your relationship was like with the governor of Alexandria?
Orestes and I, we were close. In fact, that we both had the same religion and the same views.
Geez, sounds like a pretty rough everyday life you had to deal with. If I may ask, what happened between you and Cyril?
Cyril viewed me as something that represented everything he did not. I was also very friendly with his enemy, Orestes. To end this story, he had a mom. I'm not sure if it was monks or not, but either way they killed me and then dragged my body throughout the city.
It's a shame they did this gruesome thing to you, but we'll wrap it up with one last question. What happened to your school, where you taught and then directed?
The Neoplatonist School of Philosophy continued its teaching and had some of the great minds of time study there. It remained open until 642 when the Arabs invaded and closed it down.
What an incredible story of a girl who was taught by her father, became a teacher, and then a martyr.
Correct. Now how about you? What's your name?
I'm Zeno.
Nice to meet you, Zeno. Where are you from?
I'm from Elea, an ancient town in southwestern Italy. My friends call me Zeno of Elea.
Interesting. Do people call you anything else?
I'm also known as the first dialectician.
Why do people call you that?
Because I put into question many logical statements by assuming the contradiction of those statements, no matter how absurd those contradictions may be.
What do you mean?
Say, for example, you took these two pencils and placed them in a row. Then we absolutely have a definite number of objects. We have two objects, correct?
Right.
Right. But couldn't we say that we could fit another pencil in between these two pencils? Can't we keep putting an infinite amount of objects in between the two pencils so that we no longer have a definite number of objects? Instead, we have an infinite amount of objects.
Maybe, but what if the space between the two pencils was too small to place another pencil in between them?
You mean like this? Then we could just put a paper clip in between them, couldn't we?
Fine. Then what if the space between the pencils was too small for a paper clip to squeeze between them?
Then we could just take a hair, and place it in between them. The point I'm trying to make is that we started out with a definite number of things, but between those two things, an infinite amount of things can exist if we continue to make those things infinitely smaller, in the case of moving from a pencil to a paper clip to a hair. And then in that way, we're making them infinitely smaller, thus contradicting our statement about the definite.
You just blew my mind, Zeno. Where did you come up with this?
I went to a school called the Eleatic School, where I learned about things like plurality, monism, and contradicting what one assumes to be common sense.
Sounds hard. You must have had some pretty good teachers.
I did. I studied mostly under a man named Parmenides, who started the Eleatic School. He taught me pretty much everything I know.
Wow, you guys must be famous for all these different kinds of logical reasoning.
Not exactly. We actually have a lot of critics.
How could that be?
Well, the thing about our logic is we challenge common sense, and the truths we assume in our proofs stem from what some call nonsense. So many other philosophers challenge what we say and ridicule us for our efforts.
Sounds horrible.
It's not so bad. If I never had to defend Parmenides and myself, I wouldn't have come up with the different theories about infinite objects. Defending my beliefs also led me to other paradoxes, like the paradox of motion, where I contend that no motion is possible because no finite distance can ever be traveled. And also the paradox about place, where I assert that if everything has a place, then there are an infinite amount of places.
Well, it seems like you led an interesting life. Did you write any books?
Just one, but I have a feeling that it's going to get lost, and people in the future won't have any of my works on paper to look at.
Then why not write another one?
I don't really feel like it.
Then how would people ever know about your paradoxes if your books get lost?
Plato wrote about me in his dialect called Parmenides, the same name of my professor at the Eleatic School.
Do you think your paradoxes will have a lasting effect on logic or mathematics, even if they're rooted in the absurd?
Maybe. I feel like mathematicians could probably use my argument to prove complete divisibility, and maybe my insane arguments might lead people to demonstrate the soundness of mathematics in the sense that math correctly describes things like objects, time, and space. Tomorrow, look forward to hearing from some of the great minds of the 21st century. Our special guest of honor will be Master Anthony I and Miss Michelle. As always, have a mathematical day, and see you tomorrow.